Hola a todas y a todos nuevamente. Me da muchísimo gusto que sigan con nosotros en estos paneles de la Semana de Innovación. Ahora nos toca tocar un tema muy importante, que es el tema de longevidad, y no solo desde el punto de vista del impacto que va a tener en la población que está creciendo y probablemente enfermedades asociadas a la edad, sino una perspectiva muy diferente, la perspectiva del valor de todo ese segmento arriba de 60 años, de poder extender esa vida y con una vida sana. Y para eso me da mucho gusto presentar a Margareta Colangelo. Margareta es CEO de Jethroom, lleva más de 30 años trabajando en Silicon Valley, una de las grandes líderes en el tema de la discusión de longevidad y cómo esta transición puede ser vista de un punto de vista positivo y de impacto para las sociedades. Así que es un gusto tener a Margareta. Margareta, welcome to this panel on longevity. It's great to have you participating. And as I believe, this is your first participation in any country in Latin America, which is very nice. And before having you start your presentation, I would like to also mention, y me gustaría mencionar que nos iba a acompañar hoy Luis Calderón, director general de Biogen, un amigo personal muy importante para mí y expresidente de AMIIF. Por motivos personales no podrá estar acompañándonos, así que le enviamos a Luis un fuerte abrazo. Y habiendo dicho eso, Margareta, thank you very much, and the audience is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm very excited to join you and talk about longevity. So first, I'd like to share some slides. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so here's my first slide. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this slide explains what we mean when we talk about longevity. So the first line shows how life is normally, where people live their lives and they're sick throughout. They get diseases like heart disease and cancer and things like that. And many of them happen as people age. So many of the worst diseases are age related, and they usually start around 50. And now we're moving into a new type of a new phase, and that's health span. So during this, and that's the green line. So during this time, people's lifespans are increasing and people are living longer, sometimes 10 and 20 years longer, but they're sick. So sometimes they're still sick for the last 10 years of their lives. And we are able to treat some of those diseases. So it's better than in the past, but it's going to get even much better. So the orange line is what we talk about when we say longevity. And what that means is many companies are developing treatments now, and they're doing a lot of research that's very, very successful. And they're developing treatments that we can take so that we can slow down aging. And so all those diseases that happen as we age won't happen. And they won't happen when we're 40 or 50 or 60. We can basically delay aging with these treatments. And there's 300 companies in the world that are working on treatments for aging now. And some of them are specifically focused on aging, but other ones are focused on age-related diseases, which are cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, things like that. So, and later on, I'll tell you about some of those companies. But basically, longevity when we say longevity, we don't mean everyone's going to live till 100 the way they are now. Basically, people will live longer and healthier. And even though they'll age chronologically, they'll hopefully will be able to keep people younger, and by keeping them younger, healthier. So that's what we mean. So it's a very positive thing. This slide was made by a company called In Silico Medicine. And I've been following them for about 7 years now. And they're using AI to discover drugs to treat aging and also other diseases. And what's interesting about this slide is it shows that the biological aging starts around 35. And so what they're hoping to do is intervene that early. When people are about 35, they can start treatments so that they don't age and they don't get sick at all, and then prevent disease. But something that I think is interesting about this slide is that if people do intervene when they're 35 with their medical, get medical treatments, they're going to also have to start thinking about organizing their finances, because prior to the treatments, they may live till 80, but with the treatments, they may live past 100 or more. So they'll have to be prepared financially to live longer lives, so they can afford to live all those extra years. I've written, I think, 10 or 15 articles on this company in silico medicine, and they're doing some incredible things. And it's very, very, it makes you really excited about the future, because it's just a few years away. This slide shows that this is for the United States. Most of the money in the United States is held by the older people. So, and it's going to stay that way. People are going to hold on to their money. So if people live 20 or 30 years longer, they will keep accumulating more money, and their children won't inherit it as early, or other people will not have the money the way they did in the past. So this is something to think about. And I don't have this data for Mexico, but I know that this is true in many countries around the world, that most of the money is in the hands of the people over 60. And there's 1 billion people worldwide who are over 60. And that demographic is going to increase and increase. So there'll be, for the first time in history, there'll be more older people than young people. This map shows the percentage of the population in different countries that are over 65. So the darker blue shows countries that have an older population. So one example is Japan. And you can't see it on this map, but Singapore also has a large percentage of the population is over 65. And you can see Portugal, Italy, Spain. And if you look at Mexico, Mexico doesn't. Mexico, I think 13% of the population of Mexico is over 60. And like, for example, Saudi Arabia, only 6% of the population of Saudi Arabia is over 60. But interestingly enough, some of the countries with a young population are very interested in longevity medicine, not for the older people, but for the younger people, so that they don't get old. So that's really interesting. I get a lot of emails from companies, from countries, people who live in countries where they have very low, many young people who are interested in longevity. This slide is based on cities throughout Latin America. And it was from some research that was just published in January 2021. And it shows the life expectancy in 365 cities in Latin America and the variation. And this is only for cities. And, the aging in cities versus countryside is different. But I thought this was interesting because many places, and also it's for the left is women and the right is men. Many places in Mexico have the shortest life expectancy for men in cities. And then there's also, you can see that it's true in other places. But then if you look, there's some cities that have very high life expectancy for both men and women. And that's a very interesting paper if you're interested in reading it. It was in Nature in January. This slide shows life expectancy by state in Mexico. And it's just interesting because there's so much variation between different states. And there's actually been a lot of very interesting research about aging in different states and differences between men and women in Mexico. This slide shows 15 longevity companies and how much money has been invested in them. And I wanted to show you this slide because a lot of people haven't heard of these companies, but most of them have been around since 2013, 2014. And they've made a lot of progress. The first one is Calico, and they were founded by people here in California, and Google is one of their main investors. And then Human Longevity. Most people have heard about Human Longevity. They have some very interesting assessment things. One's called the Health Nucleus, where they can assess your biological age. And then these I know the CEOs of most of these companies, and the one at the bottom is In Silico Medicine. That's the one that's using AI to do drug discovery for longevity. And there's 300 companies worldwide that are developing treatments. So, I've written over 150 articles on this subject, and most of them focus on a single company or maybe a group of companies that are working on the same area of aging. And there's some are really, really doing extremely interesting research, and a lot of them have finished like mouse trials. And a lot of these companies, I think like 6 companies that I've spoken to, are starting human trials within the next 12 months. So if some of these companies start human trials and the trials go well, that means that within 5 years, we may have access to some of these treatments that slow down aging, and in time, maybe even reverse aging. So that could be really incredible. This is, I wanted to show you this slide because there's a whole new area within medicine that's called longevity medicine. And there's even a training course on this that I actually took the training course. And it just describes how in the future, doctors will be able to use AI to help assess the health of their patients and assess many different biomarkers of aging, and then help give very precise and personal treatment to their patients. And it won't start in old age. It can start young. When someone's 30 or 40, they can use many different methods like deep aging clocks, and there's many different ways to assess how someone's aging. And then the AI can help the doctors prescribe, drugs that are optimized for that patient, and they can optimize the dosage. So you'll get exactly what is best for you, which is very different from the way things are now. And I wrote an article on that. If anybody's interested, they can read a whole article. They just published an article in Nature, and they're going to publish another one in a few months. It was actually the paper they published in February was the most popular aging paper. So people are really interested in longevity medicine. This slide just is an example of some of the articles that I've written on this topic. So because we only have 45 minutes today, I can't go into the specifics, but the articles are very detailed. And every time I've written an article, I've spoken to the scientists and the researchers who are doing the research. And the things they're doing are so surprising that it's important to be really accurate and give a lot of data so I don't like to be superficial in my articles. So if you're interested in all these different kinds of therapies, you can look either on LinkedIn or on my website, and you could read about all these companies. And I'm every week I publish a new article. So when these human trials begin, I'm going to follow them and report how they're doing. So that's the end of the slides. So I'm going to stop sharing. So are we back to?
Yes, thank you very much, Margareta. Okay. Just let me open up with a question. You talk about some 10 new technologies. Could you give us one example? ¿Nos podrías dar un ejemplo de una de esas tecnologías?
So there's many different areas of aging research, and one of the areas that's the most advanced is using AI for drug discovery to treat aging, but also to assess how people are aging. And So that the company that's number one in doing that is In Silico Medicine. And so they're using AI to help find drug targets and shorten the amount of time, so that instead of taking 10 years to develop drugs, maybe we can do it in 2 or 3 years. And they're working with big pharma companies doing that. So that's AI and drug discovery, but there's also companies that are doing nanomedicine, and that's very, very exciting for aging research, because some of them are developing techniques to help the body get rid of senescent cells. And, as we age, our bodies accumulate senescent cells, and they cause inflammation, and they cause a whole cycle of disease. And so companies are working on ways to help the body get rid of the senescent cells. And some of my articles are on them, and it's always shocking to read about it, because it's so unlike what we do now. So, now if someone has a disease like cancer, they put drugs into the body and to treat the diseases. But some of these methods for aging don't put anything in, they take things out. So there's a company called Nanotics that's developing therapies that help deplete the body without putting harmful drugs in the bodies, and there's no harmful side effects. And so I've seen the mouse studies for several companies that are doing this, and it works extremely well in mice. And so we're really optimistic about, trying it in humans, and they're going to start these trials in 18 months. So if it works, it will change everything. Because, for example, in the mice, you give the mice an injection, and within a few minutes, the senescent cells are gone. I mean, it doesn't, and then you have to assess the mice and see if there are any left. And then if there are, then give them more treatments. So we don't know how it's going to work in humans, but if it does work in humans, it would really help, because then people wouldn't get sick, and it wouldn't start the whole cycle of getting sicker and sicker. And if we, one thing that's really exciting about longevity is it's not just that you have more years to live, you have more functional years. And so it will really change everything if we can continue on in life the way we are when we're 40 or 50, when we're 70 and 80. And that could really change everything. So it's not, I think a lot of people, when they hear about longevity, they think it's just adding additional years, and that, people can live till 110 or 120, the way people are 110 today, because there are people, there are 500,000 people who are over 100 today in the world. But that's hopefully for our generation, it's not going to be like that. We won't ever be biologically 100. We will be chronologically 100, but biologically much younger. And then also, I think people are still thinking that they may die at, 70 or 75. But Stanford University did a really big study on this recently. And they said that my generation, which is Generation X, which is anybody who's between 40 and 55 today, we have a 30% chance, no, a 20% chance of living till we're 100. And many people can live even longer than that. So basically, our generation will live decades longer than the previous generation. And a lot of people don't know that, and they're not prepared for that. They're just prepared to, like financially. A lot of people are preparing financially to live till they're 80. But there's a 20% chance that many of those people will live till 100. So that's it. I think that's really important for people to realize.
That's great, Margarita. Now, moving to Spanish. ¿Cómo todo esto que está ocurriendo, cómo va a impactar las economías de los países? En el caso de México tenemos una población joven, estamos en un buen momento, pero ¿cómo es la visión del impacto que tendrá esto económicamente y en desarrollo para los países si todo esto que estás platicando empieza a suceder en 5 años? Did you get that in English?
No, I didn't hear anything in English.
Oh, sorry. You're talking about all this transformation and the opportunity of living biological, better lives and decades of improvement in our life expectancy. Mm-hmm. How does this affect, for instance, an economy like Japan now, but how does it affect a country like Mexico? We only have 13% of our population above 60 years old. 5.6 million of those 17 million are still active. But if suddenly we can have 10, 20 years more in a biological better fashion, how will that impact the country?
Well, Mexico is really interesting because when I was preparing for this roundtable, I read a lot of data on Mexico that's new. It's been done in the last few years. And the data said that Mexico has the highest average retirement age of any country in the world. So it's 46% of men and 15% of women in Mexico still work after age 65. And 1 in 4 men aged 80 in Mexico still work. That's a shocking thing. So 1 in 4 men aged 80 work. So if you look at all of those people who are over 65 who continue to work, and they're working as they're aging normally. But if those people have access to longevity treatments, they can continue to work the way they're working, but be very much more functional. And they can be, working at 80, but be biologically 50. And, Mexico's different because the average retirement age worldwide is 63. So of all the other countries, most people are expecting to retire at 63 and they're not prepared to work past 63, which could be, if that's their mindset, even if they're given longevity treatments, they may not have the mindset to continue working for 30 more years. But in Mexico, so many people are already working past 65 that it could actually be really good because the people already have that work ethic, but then they'll be much more functional. So it could be really interesting because, I'm just imagining that many people I know do not want to work past 60 and they may live till 110. And what are they going to do for 60 years? You sort of wonder, it is going to really change things. It's going to be a huge transition because people will live so much longer and that people aren't prepared. So there's some countries in the world that are considered longevity progressive. It's like Singapore. And they recognize population aging and they're doing all kinds of things. The government's doing things. The hospitals are preparing. They're funding lots of research. And also in Japan. And in Mexico, I'm not sure if the government's doing anything, but if the government recognizes early that, in 10 and 20 years, there'll be more people living longer, they can, they can have policies that help the people. It's going to save a lot of money in medical bills. If, for example, if thousands and thousands of people do not get Alzheimer's or don't have dementia, that's going to help their families and also the healthcare system, not to have, because, many people, when they get older, they do have dementia and it's hard for their families, but also for the health system. So just that, just not having people stay cognitively functioning would be fantastic. And let's see, there's something else. I wanted to talk to you about another thing. So many times when people are studying longevity, they study people who are not aging well. They have diseases, they have Alzheimer's, but there's a group of people who are aging very well, and they're called superagers. And Northwestern University is studying superagers now, and they've been studying them for years. And superagers are people who are 80 years old, but they have the memory of a 50-year-old. And there's hundreds of these people, and they're studied. And these people not only are high functioning, but they're very happy and they're very satisfied with their lives. And so this group of people it's sort of an interesting way to look at how we may be. If we're 80 and we have the memory and the cognitive functioning of a 50-year-old, it could be very different than what we expect. So that the Super Agers Project is very interesting, and there's a lot of research on that. And I'm going to write an article on it because so much of the research is on people who are, have dementia or have age-related diseases. And these people are they're so high functioning that life is very different, even though they're 80, Let's see, there's...
Let me just ask you a question, yes. Margarita. Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you, and hopefully no one's listening, I'm 93, but I feel like I'm 64, and I'm doing great. So I think I'm part of this. What you said before, there's going to be impact, obviously, on the finances. We work more years because there's only a percentage of the population who's covered by welfare. That's an issue we have as a country. So people have to work more. So if we can turn around this, that will be much better, and we have people more fit to do the job. Secondly, younger people have to start listening to these presentations. This always seems like those of 50 and above are listening to this, but we're talking about 35 years old is where you can start delaying aging. So that means that a much bigger percentage of the population has to be listening to this. And third, if I look from a government perspective, we can talk about policies. If you can get that, the burden of disease and the impact on the health systems, which is very fragile now, and will get fragile not only in Mexico and the whole world because of the pandemic, non-communicable diseases. If we do it the right way, it's a game changer. And one of the questions is, where do we start? What do we start thinking as government? We're obviously focused on COVID, on the day by day. That's part of the reality we're living today. But if we don't start thinking ahead, and we have people thinking ahead, it's going to be tough because we still have a good time. Our average age in Mexico is about 30 years old. So that gives us a chance to be able to prepare. What are your thoughts about that?
I've been meeting with a lot of people that represent government in India and in Asia, and they're really interested in having education for people who are older. So starting even at 40 and 50, they're thinking, if once the governments and companies recognize that longevity is a fact and people will be living much longer, those companies can offer education to their employees so that they can work past their traditional retirement age. And that's a really big topic in Asia. Like people are saying, and they're actually working on it to get, because things are changing so much right now with technology. And if older people can have access to education and learn about the new technologies, they can be extremely valuable because they have all this work experience, So that's one thing. I mean, I think for the countries and the companies to recognize that the populations are aging and it's going to continue, but at the same time, they're going to age better. You're going to have a lot of people aged 60 and 70 who would be great employees, and they'll be completely very high functioning. So that's something that countries can think about.
Now, the other question, you're talking about all these companies that are working on longevity treatments. I saw the list. I don't know them very well. Are any of those companies in Latin America, where they are? What has to be done how do we start thinking and attracting those investments in our countries? We have, first of all, demographic bonus. We have an incredible opportunity as a country to grow. We are in an incredible position to develop the country in the next 15, 20 years to become one of the largest economies in the world, and we believe we can do that. We have a young force. If we can start putting all this together, we should become even stronger. How do we start thinking? How do we start bringing those investments? Because I see that a lot of these companies are not in Latin America, not in Mexico, and we don't want to be behind in technology. We want to be at the same level as all those countries. What are your ideas? And if that's being thought out, and if you're looking at these clinical trials, are they set to be in certain countries? Are they doing it globally to measure different ethnic people, Latin population in compared, just to make sure that we get a global data? What can you tell us about that?
So there are, I did some reading on this, and that right now there's 325 professionals in Mexico who are researching aging. And they're, some of them are collecting data and analyzing it, and other ones are actually researching aging. So that's great. And they've written many, many peer-reviewed papers that have been read internationally. So I think there actually is a lot of aging research in Mexico, but we just haven't, no one's written about it, but I'm going to. So I'm a lot of times I've focused on San Francisco because I'm here. I'm right here, and I can drive to the offices, and I can see, meet the researchers. In fact, the #1 place in the world for aging research is 10 minutes from my house. It's called the Buck Institute. And so I can go there. It's very easy. And there's 250 aging researchers there from all over the world. So the reason a lot of my articles are on local companies is just because I don't really like to just read about something I've heard about. I like to meet the people, and I like to, to talk to them in depth about their work. And so I will do that for Mexico because I think it's really interesting. There's something that I do think we should mention, and that's that right now there's over 500,000 people in the world who are over age 100. And the country in the world that has the most people over 100 is Japan. But something really interesting about that is that in Japan, 57,000 of those people are women, and only 8,000 are men. So, and that's a ratio of 7-1. And the Japanese government is really focused on this. And they said that in the next couple decades, the ratio will be 11-1. So that's really something to keep in mind for women. That, there'll be many, 57,000 women compared to 8,000 men right now. That's right, and so I think women need to realize that they may outlive their husbands, and they may be completely surrounded by thousands of other women over 100. And many of those women maybe haven't worked or haven't saved enough. So I think that, that's something that society has to realize, that there's so many more women who will live much longer.
And that's interesting, because when you look at our demographics, it's obvious that we still have to work much more on policies to ensure that women have same opportunities in our countries. That's something that we've all discussed, and there's still a long way to go there. And if I see that in the long term, there's going to be women that are going to drive. Clearly, women are going to drive the economies. So we have to start thinking today how we're going to work from a younger age throughout all the lifespan. Especially because if we don't have that, we can go into a huge disadvantages long term. So I think this drives the need for public policies, immediate attention, because changing and shifting to this mindset doesn't happen in one day. It's got to be a strategic way of thinking of the country as a society, because we will definitely be having more population growing over 60 more and more time, as you said. People who can still add a lot to the economy. We have to see it in a positive way. As you said, we've got to see those people in a positive way. And I say that because when we had the COVID crisis, especially in Europe, we were talking about if hospitals get overflown, we have to start thinking, who do we prioritize? 60 and above, no. That was a tough discussion last year, and Chris, that will continue.
This. So you and I discussed this once, and since then I read about it. And I learned that here in California a year ago, so in March of 2020, the triage rules, the guidelines said that if someone's over 60, that had to be, factored in to the triage. But when they announced that a year ago, 60 different organizations, said that's not fair, that is ageist. So they actually changed the triage rules in California, and they changed them in June. So about 3 or 4 months later, they were changed. So if somebody has COVID and they go to a hospital in California now, they can't be, if the resources are, strained, people can't be judged on their age, on their chronological age. So, but if they're very sick and they have issues, they can use that, but they can't just look at your birth date and say, oh, we won't treat you, because we know that happened in Italy. We know that they were, it didn't happen here because people spoke out. So I was really surprised. I didn't know that till after, I only realized that in the last few weeks. So things can change. If people realize that those are the triage rules, they can speak out and hopefully change those.
That's good. And then going back to all these companies doing the research, how do we start? I believe in alliances. And last year, what was proven from COVID, that everybody came together, academia came together with industry, governments, we all came together to really find a global solution. Longevity will be the same. And if there's some learning that we had, and we said learnings, one is we have to learn from these experiences. 2, we have to continue an alliance. It's something that before was very, very difficult to happen. Now we're finding that we can combine efforts. How do we, from Mexico, academia, universities, find these partnerships early on? You're talking about this place very close to your home with 380 doctors working on aging. You said there's 325 in Mexico. How do we start connecting? Because knowledge is fundamental. We don't want to get behind this. How do we start finding? Where do we start connecting?
We should contact. 3 minutes left. Oh, we should contact the aging researchers and invite them to conferences and have them share their information. Because if people start to understand the information, I think that they will, want to partner with these people. But I just wanted to say something. Of all in my research, I realized that in all the countries in the world, the Mexico has the highest number of people over 100 who are not in nursing homes. So 95% of the people in Mexico who are over 100 live with family. Only 5% live in nursing homes, whereas in other countries, it's average 60% of the people. So then when I was reading about Mexico, there's a lot of things about Mexico that stand out that are very good for the society. And that's one of them. I just wanted to add that. I think that's amazing that that the people in Mexico have that type of society because in the United States, many people, were in nursing homes and they died during COVID because they were in those nursing homes. And now nobody wants to go to nursing homes because of what happened with COVID. So anyway, I think Mexico really stands out in a lot of positive ways with longevity. And maybe in your next conference next year, you could have a longevity panel and have researchers and longevity companies come and talk to you, and by that time they'll have some results from human trials. So it'd be really exciting.
Thanks for that. I will make sure that conference happens this year. I think we can't just continue waiting. We have to really adapt, understand all the knowledge and what's going on. And I think we early on, we have to start working that. I know that the Secretary of Health, Dr. Alcocer, when he arrived, he said, I got to talk about mental health, about aging. So I know he has it in his agenda. The government has it. So I think we got to see how we partner and how we bring all this information, because it's a new vision from the older population to longevity, people living longer, better, which can do much more, add to the societies, add to the economy, add to the development, and live healthier and better lives. So that I think is a great turn. So on behalf of AMIIF, I want to thank you very much for this first conference in Latin America. I'll continue following you, and we'll be following you, and hopefully we can continue this dialogue to see how we can move forward.
Thank you very much, Chris. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.